Dr. Bonada at the University of Waterloo. She leads the research and knowledge mobilization efforts there, integrating applied science, risk assessment, and policy to advance practical climate adaptation strategies. She leads the center's wildfire portfolio and co-leads the flooding initiatives while contributing to work on extreme heat. Her work focuses on translating research into cost-effective tools and guidance for municipalities, residents, and industry partners. She has developed nationally distributed flood and wildfire protection resources and regularly trains municipal staff and professionals across Canada. She holds a PhD in geography from the University of Guelph and serves on national advisory committees focused on resilient residential retrofits and wildland urban interface standards. She's a frequent media spokesperson on climate science and adaptation. As you can imagine, many organizations ask her to. She doesn't accept all those invitations, but she has accepted ours because of our impressive work in the community. We're very pleased that she could join us today and virtually, so no threat of a snowstorm today. Dr. Bonada will set the stage for planning to make your property more resilient to climate impacts. Please put your questions in the chat box for the end of Dr. Bonada's presentation. Take it away, please, Anabela.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'm just going to share my screen. And maybe just to start off, I do want to echo what Sue said. When I met Sue and Sadie and they explained to me what you're doing in Lanark County, I thought it was great to have residents that are so engaged and that are so interested in reducing their emissions and making their homes more sustainable. In like when you're doing that, you're actually helping your community, you're helping your neighbors. And they asked if I could help out and step in and talk about climate resilience, climate adaptation. All that means is preparing ahead of time for the impacts that we're seeing from climate change. You're already doing so much incredible work out there that I'm here to help you understand and see some of the tools that are available to reduce your risk by just doing a little bit more, or even some of the stuff that you're probably already doing to reduce your emissions can actually work to protect your home from some of these impacts. So as Sue mentioned, I'm Anabela Bonada. I work at the Intact Center on Climate Adaptation. We're housed at the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. So I work in Waterloo, Ontario. And at the Intact Center, we decided to focus on just 3 perils. So those 3 perils for us are flooding, as you'll see in the top image of my presentation, extreme heat, and wildfire. And the reason for this is because the costliest and most common peril for Canadians is flooding. So it costs a lot of money out of pocket. It costs our governments, it costs insurers quite a bit of money. But as the center started and they were developing their research, and I joined just a few years ago, wildfire slowly started to creep up as another very expensive peril for the country. So even though wildfire is natural, so is flooding. Our communities are being more and more impacted. People are being more impacted. And so it's costing us quite a bit of money. And with extreme heat, it's a little bit different. So it's not so much the cost financially, but it's a cost socially. So extreme heat has a real cost to our lives, our livelihoods, our health. So we've decided to focus on these 3. Although I do want to be clear, there are other perils that impact our country, and especially the areas that you're in today. There's freezing rain, storms, wind events, and there are lots of guidance out there for those events as well, but I'll be focusing on these 3 today. So to get us started, and just quickly, as Sue mentioned, I'll be around to take questions at the end of my presentation, but do feel free to add them to the chat. And I have a couple of questions through my presentation for which I'll ask that you just raise your hand, taking like a poll kind of question. So look out for those. And so what I wanted to start with, just so we're all kind of starting from the same base, is if you look at this video, just on the right-hand side of the screen, what you're seeing here is that for each line is 1 year of the temperature globally how it changed from the average. So when you see a blue line, for example, and as it changes and they become white to red, that means the temperature was rising year by year. So this is how we know that climate change has been occurring. We're tracking temperatures from a baseline of 1800 and before, where the temperatures would have shifted, at that color that you see at the bottom. So for here, it starts at 1880 and it goes all the way to last year. So next year we'll have another line added to this graph. As time has passed, the zero means that the temperature was on average the same year to year. And as it moved outside of that, it means that we've increased our average temperature globally by up to 1 degree or more, as you see the lines going out, over the last few years. And we've only been warming our planet. So that warming on average globally equals about 1.1 degrees Celsius. For Canada, it actually means 2 degrees Celsius. So that means we're warming at double the rate of the rest of the world. And there's good reason for this. We're a very large country. We have a lot of land mass, so there's a lot of land to be warmed quicker. But we also have our northern regions that have permafrost, so that they're consistently cold and frozen. And as our climate warms, we're melting permafrost, and all of that is releasing more CO2 to the atmosphere. It's absorbing more radiation. And so we're warming quicker than the rest of the world. Our northern regions are actually warming at about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. And of course, this is an average. So throughout the country, we're seeing differences regionally and locally. And so as temperatures rise, even though we're just talking about a 2-degree rise, we're starting to see more frequent and severe extreme weather. So when we look at this graph here on the right side, just that increase in the last 30 years is leading to the more storms that we've been seeing and experiencing across the country. And so the warming is really reshaping risk for us. So areas that might have not been at risk before are seeing more risk, or that didn't experience certain types of climate perils are starting to see them. And that's why at the Intact Center, we focus on climate adaptation. And that's why Sue and Sadie invited me today, so that we can do everything that we can to protect ourselves from those impacts that we're already experiencing from a changing climate. And so just to highlight some of those impacts that have been in your area or close to your area, and this is just from the last year, we have had more ice storms, and quite severe ice storms that have led to power outages for a long amount of time. We've also had, and this one's not in your area, but I included it because wildfire smoke reached your area. So Saskatchewan and Manitoba experienced the worst wildfire season in 2025, and the smoke spread all the way to southern Ontario. And that's where this comes in. So air quality reached the highest level, or the worst level, in Ottawa, and this is from June 7, 2025, but it occurred again in August, over the August long weekend. And last year, when Environment and Climate Change Canada did their attribution studies, so attribution just means that you can attribute an event to climate change, they found that out of 11 heat waves, 10 were made more likely due to climate change. So all that means is that, let's say 30 years ago, or whichever baseline they used for the study, they would have had 1 heat wave occur in the entire country. But now, because of climate change, we had 11 heat waves occur. And all of this is projected to only increase for us. So today we're going to divide the presentation into flooding, extreme heat, and wildfire, and just what that means for the country and your region. And then we're going to look into all the tools that we have available to protect ourselves. And so for 2026, this is the last little news piece I have for you. There's already been a prediction that this could be another hottest year on record. So just like the last 10 have been for the globe. So the Southern Hemisphere has already been experiencing this. It's hard for us here in Canada to, like, how do we know that 2026 is going to be so cold when parts of the country have had some of the coldest temperatures in a long time over this winter? But actually, our northern regions experience hotter than normal temperatures over the winter. But the Southern Hemisphere has actually been dealing with a lot of extreme heat this past summer. What was summer for them? Wildfire events were quite extreme. We saw it in Chile, in Argentina, in Australia, homes being evacuated and being burned down. So when we see what's happening in other parts of the world in their summer months, we can kind of start to see what could happen for us up here. And compounded with that is that right now we are in a climate phase that's called La Nina. La Nina tends to cool the earth slightly, and we're transitioning to neutral. And neutral doesn't really do much. That's what it means. And then it transitions to El Nino. So there's a very high chance that by the midsummer, we will be transitioning to El Nino. This is important because El Nino causes more warming. So naturally it warms the earth, but when we compound it with climate change and the warming that we're causing, it means hotter than normal years. And that's how they came up with, 2026 is a year to look out for. So as extreme weather increases, as I've just shown you with these pieces of news media, so do costs for us. So this graph here captures catastrophic insured losses. So what that means is that if an event cost insurers, if they have to pay out $30 million, that event will make it on this graph. So if you think about it, we're not getting all the numbers here. There are lots of events that cost less than that. So these bars would be even higher if we included them. So all of the numbers have been corrected for 2025. So here we can compare the very first numbers, 1983 to 2025. And if we look back at the area that is not gray on the graph, so up to 2008, a catastrophic insured losses on average cost the country anywhere from 350 million to 500 billion. And the most expensive in that time was the 1998 ice storm. Yesterday we had a session and we talked about that incredible storm, and it was so major that even in a time when on average, the losses were 500 million, that storm cost $3 billion back then. But since then, so since this time period, if you look at the gray area, and I do want to say one more thing, those extreme rises in catastrophic insured losses were usually due to one major event, like the Eastern ice storm, Quebec floods in 1996, and wind and rainstorms in Ontario were quite high as well in 2005. But since then, so when we look at the gray area, on average, insurance is paying out anywhere from $2.1 to $3 billion per year. And it's being caused due to multiple events. So we're actually running out of space to add the events that are causing this, because it's no longer, well, we had that one-off, that one anomaly, that one storm that isn't normal for our region that cost a lot of money. Now we're having lots of storms occur, and they're incredibly increasing the prices. So we see that exponential line go up. So 2024 was the costliest to date, costing $9.4 billion, 9.4, I think. And that was caused due to several events. So one that you'll probably remember is that a third of Jasper burned down. So that one comes to mind because it's quite an iconic region. But that's one of the situations that we had. But we also had major floods in Toronto and Quebec, a hailstorm that caused so much damage. So we're seeing more extreme weather events, and they're becoming costlier for our society. So I did mention these are insured losses here. And the reason I say that is because the cost to society is not fully captured here. So for every dollar of insured loss, there are 3 to 4 in uninsured losses. And those are those little dollar signs at the top. And what we mean by that is that there are areas that are currently uninsurable. And I'll mention this again later, but 10% of homes in Canada do not have flood insurance, for example, because they live in such high-risk regions. And also, when an extreme weather event occurs, people can't go to work. They may have to miss work. Businesses may need to shut down for a few weeks, for days, depending on if they have electricity or not, if their employees can get to work. There are costs to our health system. So wildfire smoke events are incredibly costly to our health system. Extreme heat events, they fill up our hospitals. So all of those costs are not quite captured in the insured losses. So imagine this graph being 2 to 4 times larger. And those 3 to 4 extra dollars per dollar we're paying for. So it's taxpayers, it's governments, even businesses, of course, have to pay out of this. So this is costing our society quite a bit of money. And so I did have a question for the audience, and if you know how to use the hand up, we can just kind of see how many people maybe have experienced extreme weather. And I suspect that from conversations that I have, many of you might have been around for the ice storms, so for the one in 1998, but also the one from a couple of years ago. But have you noticed a change over the past couple of decades? So if you've noticed a change, just put up your hand and just so we can kind of have an understanding of how many of us have felt this. And if you're happy to share this at the end of the presentation, I'd be happy to hear some of your stories. I'd like to ask this question because I know the numbers, I see the science of the impact from extreme weather, but I also personally have experienced wildfire smoke, extreme heat, and the derecho that went through Peterborough, where I was at the time, but it went all the way to Ottawa, starting in Kitchener. So for myself, I also experienced a flood event, and just in the last few years, all of this in the last 3 years. So with me noticing a change, I've been asking people, are you noticing this for your life as well? So please feel free to share in the chat, and we can talk about it after. So thank you so much. And then I'll also have a couple of questions near the end for the audience as well. And maybe if anybody's brave enough, they can speak up.
So Guy, would you like to comment on what you noticed?
Well, I was living in the Nepean, and basically, well, of course, I'd suffered the ice storm back in '98, but then my neighborhood in the Nepean, we had the tornado go through, which pretty much decimated a bunch of houses about 100 meters from my place. I was very lucky. And then, of course, during that period, we lost power for a week. And then when the derecho went through, we lost power for another week and a half. And then we went on a kayaking trip in near Sudbury the year that there was the smoke from the wildfires was so bad, we actually ended up losing half of the trip because the air quality was so poor out on Georgian Bay. So there's been multiple things over the last 10 years or so.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, and those are such great examples. And of course, the home destructions, and that's clear in that payout number. But when you mentioned your kayaking trip, the incredible effect that extreme weather is having on tourism is so high. I was lucky enough to see a presentation on this as well. And some regions of the country are noticing less bookings, less wedding bookings, for example, over the summer because they experience wildfire and over wildfire smoke. So it's having a real impact on our tourism industry, which again translates to our economy, but also just us. So you had planned this trip probably for quite some time and invested in it and had to cancel and come back early. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But it means us changing the way that we live here in Canada and around the world, of course. So it's having an impact just on the choices that we have to make. I think we might have time, Sue, for a couple more.
So Pam, you were up there and you disappeared. Did you have a comment? No? Okay. Tim, would you like to comment? No. Okay.
Okay.
How about Laura Cupper?
Hello.
Hi.
We experienced the derecho and we lost power. And one of our friends who was visiting from the Maritimes had her car totaled with the transformer falling on it.
Oh, God.
So luckily no one was in the car at the time, but it certainly brings the impact close to home.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that one, because it's one of those like lucky situations. It could have been so much worse, but there are impacts that we don't think of. So we imagine that it's going through, knocking down some trees, but a car can be completely impacted by having transformers come down. Of course, we see those impacts as well with wildfire when electricity lines fall down and cause more fire or block roads. So there are like impacts on impacts kind of situation, like cascading impacts that can really affect us. I see Tim.
Yeah, he had said no.
Oh, okay, because he came up with his.
Yeah, I know. How about Berta?
Hi, yes, we experienced a of a big ice storm in Lanark County about 5 years ago, I guess, and I have a branch of a beautiful maple tree in front of my house, totally broken and fell right in my front porch, and that was totally devastating, and not just for the tree, but for the expense of taking care of that, and difficult even to find an arborist at that time to take care of the tree because they were also busy with so many trees that fallen in the area. So yeah, that's my experience so far.
Thank you. And it's I like how everybody's bringing kind of a different impact that they saw. So the availability of the services that we need to get out of the situations. You could probably call an arborist today and you have, 10 at your door, but in a situation like that, you can't really find people because everyone is trying to help others, and even probably the arborists are dealing with their own homes having some sort of impact and not having electricity. So it has these cascading effects, as I mentioned.
Okay, we have a couple more there, Anabela, if you'd like to take them.
I think we could do one more and then we'll move on. I have more questions
Yes.
throughout as well.
So, Dieter. Dieter Seller? No? Okay. Doug Barr.
Yeah, the derecho is what I recall from a few years ago. I didn't experience any damage here, but I remember just how dark it got. It was like night for about a couple of minutes. And a couple of kilometers north of me, not south of Highway 7, but north of me, some of the farmers talked about a tornado racing through their property, missing their houses, but racing through their fields. So I hadn't heard that kind of story before. So that's my experience.
Yeah, and it'll probably become more common. So that area where the derecho hit, it's known as Tornado Alley. So every year we get actually quite a bit of tornadoes, but we just don't know where they're going to hit or where these wind events are going to hit. We've also had a conversation about this. There was a different session yesterday, and where some people are feeling like they're overwhelmed by the amount of notifications that they receive from their weather apps saying, be careful, there's a storm coming through, there could be a wind event, there could be a tornado in your area. And I said, make sure you listen to them, because it's tough, because you have to continuously change your behavior and decide what you're gonna do for that next half hour. They usually don't last very long, but you just don't know where those wind events are going to hit. So thank you, because that's a great example of seeing it come through. Everything changed around you, but it actually hit a region just a little bit far away from your own property.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Another?
Okay, we can do one more.
Okay, Coral.
Hi. I'll try to make this quick, but I feel like it's numerous of these events that have actually impacted my life and the life of my family over the last few years. The derecho being probably the biggest one, that my son and I were actually caught out in our car, not very far from our home during that derecho. I saw like a tension line, which I thought was a power line, come down and turned up a road, and thankfully did, because there was numerous giant trees that came down, just completely uprooted in our path. We weren't actually able to get in our driveway once things calmed down. It was so sort of fast. There was a 400-year-old oak that was uprooted on the corner of our driveway and actually made it impassable when we were trying to get home afterwards. Thankfully, we have my mom living not too far away, who's on this call as well, and has also been impacted by some of these weather events, and we were able to go there and take safety and weren't injured or hurt. But my son actually was having nightmares and other things from the trauma of this event for years, and that every time that one of these alarms would come up on my phone or on a tablet in our house, that it was kind of a really fearful situation and a lot of anxiety for all of us. I'm also a farmer, and so the amount of kind of drought situations and just the increased unpredictability of the weather patterns in the last 5 years, I've noticed. I've been farming for a little over 20 years and do a lot of stuff outside, and the frequency of them has just really increased in the last sort of 5 years, I find, of things just being kind of all or nothing when it comes to rain or drought. And that is just more and more common these days. So that's kind of the gist of it. I do find that those tornado warnings as well, that's something I've really noticed. Like, I grew up in the east end of Ottawa, or spent my teenage years there, and I just don't remember ever hearing a tornado warning or of such a thing passing through the area in the 90s. And then, now it just seems like commonplace that anytime that there's a thunderstorm in the forecast, I'm kind of prepared that it may turn into a tornado warning. And I've been, unfortunately, again, like, just the timing of things, caught on the road a couple of times when a tornado warning comes through, and you just don't really know what's the safest thing to do at that moment. Thankfully, I'm never too far from kind of a place I can take refuge, but that's, yeah. So it does cause a lot of impact on my life, I find.
Thanks, Coral.
Thank you. I'm glad we took one more, because you would be an excellent spokesperson for this. So, I mean, everybody on this call is amazing, but farmers, anglers, hunters, people that spend a lot of time outside and for years. So farmers have years of experience of watching the weather, looking ahead at what's going to happen. They're climate scientists, if you ask me, because it really affects your livelihood. And for you to say that you've seen the biggest change in the last 5 years, that's what we're trying to bring to people. And so your experience and your anecdotes are incredibly valuable. And I just want to grab onto one more, because you gave us a completely different point of view from the conversations we had. But the anxiety that your son experiences, the PTSD, there is so much research being done on this now, from evacuations, for example, from wildfires, and or people that have lost their home during wildfires. And when, the dry season is coming, when the wildfire season is coming, the impact that has on our mental health. The Intact Center did some research on homes that had flooded, and 6 months later, when people received just a notification, they would go down to their basement and just check over and over to see if it was flooding, when there was a rain event. And one of my colleagues right now, Catherine Bakos, is working on a new report to put a number on mental health from the life and health insurance side. So she's looking at psychosocial claims past a flooded event in a community. So she's comparing non-flooded communities with flooded communities and what that looked like for the claims. So that's coming out shortly. And so we'll be able to put a number on the effect that it's having on the mental health of residents when extreme weather occurs. So incredible. I didn't know if people would share. So thank you so much for sharing and helping us see that there's a real change that's happening. So the next part of my presentation, and I'll try to move through this quicker so we get to the solutions, is the harder part, because we talk about these impacts. We're going to talk about why is flooding getting worse, and what we can expect going into the future, extreme heat and wildfire and smoke. It's important for us to understand this, because I think a lot of people feel like it will not happen to them, and that would be my hope. But many of us on this call just shared that we've experienced quite a few of these risks already. So it's good to understand them, and then we'll get into the solutions part. There's so much that we can do to protect ourselves from these impacts. And I really hope that you can walk away with knowing everything that you can do. But so let's get into the first one. So for flooding, I mentioned that this is the costliest hazard for Canadians. And so that can mean up to $54,000 in damage for a basement that's flooded. And I know we shared some, again, experiences yesterday, and some people on this call have experienced basement flooding. And apart from the cost, it's just so difficult because you're not able to go to your basement, use your basement for a long time. So doing as many actions as you can to keep the water out of your basement can save you a lot of money and headache. And we'll talk about those measures in a bit. As I mentioned, about 10% of homes don't have insurance. And even where there is insurance, as you saw the graph with insurance costs going, with the payout of insurance due to extreme weather going up, it's important for us to do everything possible to reduce those costs, because we don't want more homes to become uninsurable. We already have 10% in Canada. It's about 1.5 million homes. So the idea of including all of these resilience measures to our home, it means that we can keep insurance. So we should do as much as we can. And the last one is quite important. So all homes in Canada can experience flooding. A few years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago, maybe it was just homes that were coastal, that were on a floodplain, on a river's floodplain, which is where the river is meant to flood. But now with these rainstorms that we're seeing, so I mentioned that in 2024, that year that we saw such an expensive year, we had storms come from leftover, like hurricane storms that came up all the way to Canada, and they dumped a lot of rain in the Toronto, Mississauga, like GTA region. Quebec later experienced the same kind of storm, but it wasn't from like rain coming from the west of Canada. It was coming from the States. So as the atmosphere warms, for every 1 degree of warming, it can hold 7% more moisture. So when it rains, a lot more rain is coming down. So even if your area has never flooded, we could have a lot of rain in a short amount of time, and that rain has nowhere to go. So I do urge you to prepare for flooding as much as possible. And so I've divided this part into what's happening now, what do we know, and what we could expect going into the future. So for your region, and I only have numbers for Ottawa and the surrounding area, so this is probably very close, and you've seen some of these changes. What we're seeing is a change. So this is for by 2050, but we're already starting to feel these changes and see them. More rain in the seasons where we wouldn't have had them, and more freezing rain. So just a few weeks ago, there was a storm warning, and it changed as the storm moved. But I'm from Guelph, Ontario, and so we had rain and freezing rain warning. Rain in the end of winter is not great because it can lead to flooding. The ground is frozen. So more rain events for us isn't really a good thing. Snow is more welcome than not in these situations. As you've seen in your region, these freezing rain events are lasting longer. So you have 15 hours of freezing rain coming down. So even if you have potentially healthy trees in your area, they could, like the branches just can't sustain that weight and they come down. So you can expect more intense rainfall, more freezing rain, which can lead to everything that's shown at the bottom. So things we've been talking about, like flooding, damage to your home, flooded streets. So as different with Coral's example of, experiencing a tornado in her car, with flooding, the best thing you can do is go to the highest level of your home and stay there. Do not get into a car and try to drive, as that can be life-threatening. With tornadoes, it's a bit different. You need to find refuge in a safe spot as much as you can. And that's more what to do in the moment. So switching to extreme heat. So extreme heat is known as the silent killer. And the reason that it's been given this name is because it's not loud, like a derecho coming through your region, like freezing rain. And I heard a lot of trauma from people too, saying just the sound of the freezing rain for hours. Wildfire smoke, there are things that you can see and feel. But with extreme heat, it can maybe slowly creep up on you. It may last a few days. So when we have a heat wave, the first day might feel okay, but slowly you might start to get headaches, dizziness. You can have heat exhaustion, and it can eventually lead to heat stroke and could put you at risk of death. So it's so different from the other impacts. And again, as I mentioned, it's not a financial impact. It's an impact on our health. And I'll show you in the next slide who are the people that are at highest risk. But just to give you some of the more haunting numbers, in 2021 in BC during their heat dome, which was like a heat event that would not move, and that's why they called it a dome. It's like it enveloped Vancouver and the surrounding areas, and it lasted a few days. It ended up killing 619 people. Generally, most of the deaths were to people that were living in isolation, to people that were over 70 years old with chronic illness. So it won't have the same effect on everybody, but it absolutely had a strain as well on the health system. So even if you're pretty healthy, you can still get heat exhaustion. And I do like to say and make sure that people understand that if there is a warning of extreme heat, I encourage you to change your behavior and actions for the following days. We received quite a bit over the last few summers, and it's difficult because there are a lot, it's when we do sports here in Canada. So I see like kids teams, for example, they don't cancel the sports even though there's extreme heat events and warning. I myself play a sport, and I could see playing outside when there was extreme heat, young people on my team feeling the strain. So even if you're healthy and feel well, extreme heat can still make you not, can still have an effect on your health. And so, as I mentioned, there are, even though it can affect all of us, there are people that are more vulnerable to extreme heat because they're equity deserving populations, for example, or are in situations that make them more vulnerable. So elderly individuals, infants and young children, people with chronic health conditions, outdoor workers, low income communities, homeless individuals, and urban areas. And I want to bring the last three kind of together. So when we look at low income communities, generally the housing is made in a way that there isn't very good ventilation. The buildings are too old to be retrofitted to have air conditioning. They might not have a cool room, because at least we suggest having one cool room in the building, like a common room. Of course, homeless individuals are highly exposed to extreme heat. There's nowhere to go. And urban areas. And so urban areas and low income communities tend to be in the same area. And this is due to the urban heat island effect. So if you live in a city, there's a lot of pavement, and pavement does an excellent job at absorbing heat and releasing it at night. So when temperatures are supposed to cool down, the pavement actually releases that heat. So if you live just a little bit outside of the city, you'll probably get a respite from extreme heat, but it's important to focus in those areas if we're looking at how to improve our cities so that they don't experience so much heat. So as we look forward, and as I mentioned, I'm going to show you a little bit of what to expect as well, just to make the case that preparedness, even if today you're not feeling the impacts, it's the best thing that you could be doing, because all the projections are showing that we will have more of these events. So here, and I've tried to do my best to include kind of like the area where, Lanark County is. The extreme heat outlook for 2021, which already passed, to 2050. So starting from a few years ago into the few years ahead of us, we've already seen an increase in temperature. So the color-coded map, the color coding can be seen at that top line, like that's the legend. But if you focus on the numbers on the right, you'll see that for the baseline for this, which is 1976 to 2005, there were on average, let's say 10 extreme heat days. So days with plus 30 degrees Celsius. But now, and going into the next few years, that the amount of days has increased to 25 to 26. So that's an increase of about 16 days. That's, more than 2 weeks of plus 30 days each summer that we wouldn't have experienced in the past. And I'm sure many of you have stories to share of heat waves going through the region and causing this that we've been talking about, which we wouldn't have had before. I'm already nervous about June, because for the last few years we've had a heat wave in June, and the kids are not out of school yet, and most schools are not really prepared for extreme heat. So it's quite a difficult time, because you can't really do anything to protect those kids. So I'm looking out for June personally. And as we look a bit more into the future, so for 2051 to 2080, and that's not even the end of the century, that's in about 25 years, the color has really changed, because there's an increase of 40 more days of plus 30 degrees Celsius a year. So now we're looking at most of our summer, I consider summer in Canada, July and August. So a bit more than an entire month of plus 30 degrees Celsius days. So if we don't do everything possible to both reduce our emissions, to slow down climate change, but also make sure our homes are ready for this heat that's coming, it's going to really impact our homes and our communities. And finally, I did have a little, I wanted to show you where you're located. Let's talk about wildfire before we move into our resources. So wildfire for Canada is a natural process, and it's the same for flooding. So flooding should occur in areas where rivers are meant to grow. And the same thing happens with wildfire. So wildfire is meant to happen in our boreal regions and grasslands. It really opens up more land. It makes it healthier for more trees to come in. It helps open up seeds. It helps many different species and habitats for animals. So it's something that we need to let happen. So if you see in the news that there are some major wildfires occurring in northern regions, and you're wondering, like, why are they just letting it burn? There are a couple of reasons. One of them, those wildfires are supposed to happen. And if communities are not at risk, then we need our resources to be available for the communities that could experience risk in the summer. Canada is an incredible partner when it comes to wildfire defense, so suppression and going out, sending the water bombers, sending firefighters across the country, but also to other countries, and other countries do the same for us. So we need to have our resources available for when communities are at risk. So don't be alarmed if there are wildfires burning in areas that are not putting human lives at risk, as they need to occur. However, when things change are when we do talk about Canada's population that is at risk. So we have numbers from 2017, and these numbers are being updated. And so I expect these numbers to go up a bit. But back in 2017, we had about 12.3 people in Canada, 12.3% of our population living in the wildland urban interface. And all that means is when forest or grasslands meet our communities or our essential infrastructure. So those are the areas that we really need to defend. And we have about 32.1% of on-reserve Indigenous populations living in that highly exposed, high-risk area, even though Indigenous peoples make up only 5% of Canada's population. So that means that the risk there is completely disproportionate to the amount of people. So when we talk about wildfires reaching those areas, that's where we need to focus. And so when we say that wildfire risk is increasing, and we can just look at the news for the last few years where we've had these intense and our highest wildfire seasons, it has to do with a few different things. And it's not all climate change. That's why I like to include that here. We don't really have, our population is growing, so we're moving more into areas that are at risk of wildfire. We don't have building codes right now that deal with wildfire. So buildings don't have to be built in a way to resist wildfire. We hope that's changing. Hopefully that'll change by 2030. And decades of fire suppression. So for many, many years, we tried to keep fire out of forests. And it was thought that it was the best thing to do in order to protect people. But now we know, and Indigenous peoples knew this for millennia. They did cultural burning and maintained those fires. Now we know that we need to perform controlled burning or cultural burning in Indigenous communities to reduce that wildfire risk. So when you do that, you burn through the litter, you burn through dry areas, and the fires are small and you can control them. So then if you do that during the off months, which would be from about November to February, then when wildfire does occur, it doesn't have that much to burn through. And so it can go out much quicker than if we let vegetation build up. So if you see any sort of controlled fire happening near your communities, I've seen some, and recently actually I saw in the news that a couple of parks, city parks in Toronto do this. If you see that happening, that's good. It's better so that we can reduce the risk. But climate change is also having an impact on wildfire. So we're seeing it occur in areas that it didn't happen before. So Southern Ontario is not known for wildfire, but there were some incidences this past summer that we had wildfire near, very near, like Toronto, for example, and just 2 hours away. So it's happening in areas that it didn't happen before. Climate change leads to more fire weather. So those are hot, dry, windy days that help spread the flames, and it really dries out vegetation. So all of that can lead to more wildfire. So another way to show that wildfire risk is increasing is just to look at graphs from the last few years. So I took this, and it's at the bottom around September. CBC puts out graphs all summer long showing how wildfire is occurring across the country. And so for the last 3 years, 2023, 2025, and 2024, they have been the highest on record. So one after another, we've just burned more and more. And so in total, just from the last 3 years, we burned 7% of Canada's forests. And so we see that risk increasing just in the amount of land that we've burned. but also wildfire smoke has been an issue for us. And so I'll play this video for you. It's from also from NASA, and it's from the August long weekend. The fires are burning mostly in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, but just watch that plume come through. And the darkest color is the highest level of of having like bad air quality. It's the highest level, and that's what we experience in our areas, in your area, and as well as mine. So you'll see here as it goes through, even though the wildfires are occurring thousands of kilometers away, the smoke reaches across Canada in our eastern provinces. And so for the August long weekend, if you remember it all, and I do very clearly, we actually had to shift all of our plans. We had plans to go to the beach and spend the days outside, but we limited that completely and spent most of our time inside, even though it was hot outside. But you could smell the smokiness, and wildfire smoke can actually be worse for your health than other types of air pollution, just because wildfire is burning through everything. It's not just forest material, but in some areas, homes are burning, cars are burning, and so we're breathing all of that in. The type of molecules that are in wildfire smoke are so small they can also reach your bloodstream. So it's very important to make decisions that protect our health during that time. And I'll get into some of the measures that we can take. Okay, so this is where the presentation shifts a little, because I understand the beginning can be a lot, but we need to understand where the risk is and what the risk is in order to know what we can do and why it's important that we do something. So we can't control the weather, but we can definitely control how we prepare. And that's where I think there's so much that we can do that it makes me feel really good about this, and I hope it does for you as well. So I talked about this a little bit at the start, but there are really two ways for us to deal with climate change. Your group is doing quite a bit to deal with mitigation. So I know, Lanark County has done so much to speak to you about how to reduce your emissions, how to make your homes more sustainable. But here we're talking about that adaptation side. So it's preparing ahead of time. So I urge you to continue to do both, as both are needed to reduce our risk. And so I do want to make sure, even though we're here to talk about homes, that we know that a lot of the responsibility falls to communities as well. So our communities need to focus on those equity deserving groups. So if we know there are parts of our population that are going to feel the impacts much higher, resources should go to those areas. Programs should go to those areas in order to protect those communities. We need to manage and restore natural assets in order to protect ourselves from some of these perils. So for example, our wetlands are really good at slowing down water when rain comes down, of cleaning it and helping us not have flooded areas. And of course, there are a couple more there, but I just want to get to the home level protection. So it does start at the community, and then really we get into the homes. So the Intact Center has developed these infographics that take all the guidance that we've prepared from years and reports and speaking to experts and all the science that we know about the impacts of climate change, and made it as easy as possible and as accessible as possible. So these are free and downloadable from our website, and I'll share the link at the end and a QR code. And we'll get into some of the actions for each, but what I really want you to notice is that they're separated into 3 areas. So the very first one is for everybody to do. You don't really need a lot of effort or money to do it. So for example, for extreme heat, the very, very first square there is just to check on your neighbors, check on people that you know might be at higher risk. That's so important for extreme heat. So either pick up the phone or go visit someone that you know. They might not know how extreme heat is impacting them. So there's something here for everyone. Climate adaptation, climate readiness, climate preparedness is attainable for all. So I did want to show this graphic. So for each one, I'll show you how the risk gets to your home and then how those actions would reduce the risk. So this graph here shows how water can enter your home, and there are many different ways. So of course, there's what's called overland water, or it can be from a river flooding, for example. It can come from outside of your home, but you can also have plumbing. You can have plumbing issues or leakages, or you can have water backing up through the water system. So the actions that we suggest are related to that. But for the infographic in this session, I wanted to pull out a few that we could do outdoors around our home. So we can have taller window wells, or we can even cover the windows for our basement so that water doesn't go in. If fire exits permit, extending downspouts. So this one's also a cheaper solution that not many people do. And you can get downspouts that you can easily put up if you want to be able to mow the lawn. But just extending those by 2 meters will really pull water away from your home. And the last one I really wanted to show you was a rain garden. So some municipalities have subsidies for rain gardens. They're quite beautiful, and they're great at slowing down and cleaning water. So they work a little bit different from just a normal garden. So look into it. And they can do so much, and not just that. So I have a question for you on what these systems can do. And it's beyond managing that stormwater. So when rain comes down, they slow down and clean that water. What co-benefits do you think rain gardens provide to homes and neighborhoods? And anybody can answer this. I'm looking for one volunteer. And co-benefits just means other things that it does for you apart from just managing stormwater. Any volunteers? I'm sure you're going to be right. People are usually right. They just don't want to speak up.
Alice, take it away.
Well, I think some of the obvious points are the aesthetic value and the habitat. So for insects, birds, frogs, etc., the little creatures that live amongst us that we don't always notice.
Thank you. You nailed it on the head. So they look beautiful. There are some great photos out there of Vancouver's been starting to do, on the side of just city roads, they have these rain gardens, and I just think they're so gorgeous, and everybody wants to see beauty around them, but they don't realize how much of that is from nature. And of course, providing a habitat for pollinators, for other insects, other animals. You're doing so much more for your neighborhood than just reducing the risk to your home. So I love when we find solutions that do much more than one thing. And the one that isn't super obvious, and I just know because of the work that I do, is it can also reduce extreme heat as well. So greening around your home as much as you can helps reduce the incidences of extreme heat. So thank you so much. That was 100% on your answer. And so for extreme heat, I pulled out these three, and I very much on purpose pulled out the first one. So more greening helps reduce extreme heat around the home. So if we add trees, or if we already have a shady tree, make sure you maintain it. It's in good condition. So you don't want it exactly sitting on your roof, even though that does cool down your home a lot. But if you're in an area that's at high risk of wind storms, you want to make sure that tree is as healthy as possible. Of course, with the way that risk is increasing, we may have freezing rain that brings down trees, or incredible wind events that are going to bring down trees, and there was nothing we could have done, because we don't want to remove all trees. Trees are good for erosion, for extreme heat, and of course for the animals that live around us. But when it comes to wildfire risk, it's ideal to remove vegetation from the 1.5 meter perimeter around the home. So I urge you to assess your risk. Homes are becoming risk of more than one peril. So you may experience flooding, wildfire, and extreme heat. So then what do you do with your vegetation? My suggestion is, if the wildfire risk is low, maintain that vegetation very close to the home. If wildfire risk is high, but also extreme heat risk is high, which is quite common, keep vegetation. Try to maintain the 1.5 meter perimeter free, but make sure it's healthy vegetation. If you keep it watered, trees will do really well in a wildfire event. If it's not a coniferous tree, which they burn like this, try to have deciduous trees providing that shading, and they burn a lot slower, or they don't burn. And there is a huge list of fire-resistant shrubs and plants that you can have around your home. They'll provide that cooling effect, and they will not burn, or will not burn as easily in a wildfire event. I included weather stripping doors, because this one actually functions for wildfire smoke as well, and it's cheap to do, and it keeps heat in the winter, so you don't lose as much energy. So there's where you're doing a bit of everything for this one. And installing windows with low solar heat gain. If you're planning on retrofitting your windows, because this is the costlier one, think about doing it in this way, and you'll save on your energy bills as well each year it'll end up paying off for the windows. So I do encourage you though to look at the entire infographic. I just pulled out some of the actions so we could chat about them today. So actually I have 2 more questions, but I think I'll just show you the resources and then I'll take questions at the end to make sure that we stay on track. So I'll show you, I have the wildfire one is the last one left. I wanted to show you this first though, because understanding how wildfire enters communities is really important to understand why the actions are there, the best practices are there. So we have different ways for that to happen. Embers is the most common way. So embers can travel 2 kilometers or more. And when they land on the home, they can ignite any little thing that's combustible. So even if you have mulching or some leaves on your roof, they can quickly ignite that. Extreme heat can ignite a home, so you don't have to have the flame touching the home, and that's that 30-meter mark. And radiant heat, so the closer, so if something ignites like a bush, that heat can also help melt, for example, the side of the home. And then the last one is showing materials connected. So we've heard stories of when a wildfire is encroaching in a community, firefighters, if they can, they'll at least just even open a door, a gate to separate the fence. So even just opening the door will make it harder for that wildfire to go through. So looking at these numbers, FireSmart Canada has come up with the ignition zones. So the most important one is the immediate zone. They're all important. Wildfire can reach you in every way. But for the immediate zone, that 1.5 meter perimeter, if you can keep the home as clear as possible, so removing bushes or adding mineral soil, for example, or stone, and removing mulching from around the home, you're doing quite a bit to reduce that risk. And I'm moving a bit faster because I want to make sure we have time for questions. We are now working on a wildfire smoke infographic, but until then, I'm sharing with you what we have from Public Safety or Public Health Canada, sorry. You can also, for wildfire smoke, make sure that you properly seal windows and doors, keep windows and doors closed, and try to use air conditioning with an air filter when you have it, and make sure your air filters are clean, and so that you can clean the air during that time. So with wildfire smoke, it's so important to think about how to keep at least one room with clean air that you can hang out in, have your dinners in, work in. And if you need to go outside, I do recommend, if you're at high risk, using a mask to help you in these situations. So other than that, I just wanted to, we'll skip this one. I wanted to share with you our website. So if you scan this QR code, you can get to our website and download all of these infographics for free. I suggest that you tell your neighbors and your friends, the more these actions that are done, the more the resilience of the community will build up. So I rushed the last little 5 minutes, but I want to make sure we at least have 5 minutes for questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bonada. That was a wonderful presentation. I really like how you think about resilience being a community endeavor that includes humans and non-humans, and it's important to think collectively about it. So our idea for questions is that you guys could type them in the chat. So that's the little text box at the bottom of your screen. There's like almost looks like a comic book speech bubble. So if you click in there, you can write your question in the chat so that I can try and moderate questions so we can get through as many as possible. And in the next presentations, if you guys have questions as we're going, you can type them in the chat during the presentation as well, and I'll keep track of them there.
Well, something to add there too. I see here that Coral put that she uses firesmoke.ca for wildfire smoke forecasts. And yesterday, Sue was mentioning a resource on Facebook. And Sue, I forget which one it was. It was for ice storms, or was it for wildfire? Or Rachel, if you remember, or Annabelle, if you remember.
But there are many places to check. So firesmoke.ca, it's so good, the map, because you can see where the smoke is headed, and it's generally correct. Also just checking the AQHI, which is like and I hope I'm saying that right, like the air quality index for your area. So you can check online, or the biggest one for me is download the WeatherCam app. It does a pretty good job of sending you notifications when something's coming your way. It can be freezing rain. Wind is super hard to really like send the notification out on time and be able to take refuge, but generally they do a pretty good job as well. When there's conditions that could lead to flooding, bad air quality. So I encourage you highly to download the app and allow notifications so that you can prepare if an event is coming your way. And I see there is a question.
From Sue. She's asked, read the $4 to $1 cost. That's an extra $3 that individuals are paying out of their own pockets, right?
Yeah, so it's taxpayers, businesses, like it's of course an average number. And in my opinion, I think we're even low on that number because there is just so much impact that we don't really talk about and know how climate change is affecting us. So I would say that's even higher.
And then David asked, do you recommend backup power like generators or batteries to cope with power outages?
Yes. So one of the little actions on our home flood protection infographic is to have backup batteries for your sump pump. And yesterday, Sadie shared that her sump pump wasn't working during a flood event because the electricity went out. So having generators in certain areas or a backup battery will help that start if the electricity goes out. So absolutely, it's a recommendation. I'll add the link to our infographics because I didn't put the link on the slide, but this page will lead you to all the infographics. It gives you lots of actions. Do the ones you can. Can you recommend a good construction of a rain garden? I don't have like a company that I know or something because it changes by area and region. What I do know is generally when municipalities have subsidies, they'll also have a list of contractors that you can reach out to. But I wouldn't know. I speak to your conservation authority. Who's the conservation authority for Lanark? They would know probably as well.
Hay Valley covers most of Lanark, I believe.
I would reach out to them because some of the images I got to, I mean, those ones were from Calgary, but I've looked into TRCA has a really great program and great examples. Oh, and their Sue provided some information. Thank you. Rideau Valley Conservation. Yes, reach out to them.
Okay, now's your chance for one more question. If anybody has a burning one.
And feel free to reach out to me as well going forward if you have any questions or need anything. Did I not include the link? Oh yeah, I did. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bonada. It's been a wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Truly, thank you. And we are intending to have Dr. Bonada back in person in the fall when there's no threat of snowstorm. So
that'll be wonderful.
Okay.
But also, she's going to be joining us at concierge sessions. So if you haven't signed up for concierge yet, please do. But I will talk more about that at the end. Oh, and David has a burning question. Oh, never mind. That's a joke. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bernard.
And David.
Oh.
Okay, so now we're going to turn to actually more of the capacity to prep your own house for a variety of the onslaughts that come from the climate crisis. So Andy Cockburn is going to present on that. Andy is our wonderful technical advisor on the concierge program. And he's completely committed to us and to the whole program, which is just makes us feel really fabulous. Andy is a Red Seal General Carpenter and certified passive house consultant with experience in custom home building, panelized construction, timber framing, stair construction, architectural drafting, and historic restoration. He had almost 20 years of experience teaching trades and building science at Algonquin College and currently develops learning content for contractors and renovators as the education director for the National Association of Insulation Manufacturers. Andy serves on boards and technical committees in the building industry, including with the Committee on Thermal Performance and the Home Performance Stakeholder Council, and is a member of Passive House Canada and the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors. He is past president of the local Lanark Leeds Home Builders Association. He's a longtime volunteer in Perth, and we are just, I'm going to say it again, just so grateful that he is our technical advisor on our concierge program and attends as many of the concierge events as he can fit in. He's now going to describe some of the specific building science actions that you can take in your own home, including those that are just good practice and some of the interesting new materials too. Again, please put your questions in the chat box for the end of the presentation. Take it away, Andy.
Great, thank you, Sue. And my screen is showing there. You can see my presentation, yes? Give me
Yes.
a thumbs up or yes, okay. Thank you very much. So thanks to Sue and Sadie and Rachel and Dr. Bonada. And thank you for joining the session today. I'm going to take a closer look at specific measures that homeowners should consider when they're thinking about resiliency. And some of this is discussion fodder for the Neighborhood Climate Retrofit Concierge Program. And if you're interested in that, I suggest you get in touch with Sue and Sadie and Rachel. First bit of historical context. This living close to water is common for humans, which means we're often locating buildings in flood-prone areas. And this is the town of Perth in 1926, right near the soap factory. You can see you're looking down Foster Street there.
Can I pop in and interrupt you for 1 second, Andy?
Yeah.
We are seeing like your presenting view.
How about now?
That's better. And thank you,
Okay.
Roger, for catching that.
All right. Thank you. I'll get the hang of this eventually, maybe in the 2030s or 40s. And so the next view here, this is one that's probably a little bit more in our memory. 1998, near the Clyde River Bridge in Lanark Village, right near the River Park at South Street and George there. And this kind of event is more likely to occur as climate changes, as Anabela hinted at, and we'll get heavier snow and rain events. And so we're going to have to prepare ourselves for these. When we think about resiliency for our homes, what does that really mean? What is resiliency and how can we build resiliency? A resilient building should be able to last a long time, 100 years or more. And equally, it should be able to stay comfortable with minimum input from the grid or from fossil fuels. If we can heat and cool our buildings with less energy, we're creating a more stable situation. The durability we incorporate into a resilient building should make it so that we can withstand ice storms, rain and flood events, and wind and fire as much as possible. And this means that our buildings should give us a place to stay safe for as long as possible, no matter what's going on outside. As Anabela pointed out, climate events are happening with more frequency and more strength in all places in Canada. We need to consider resilience for our buildings so that we can continue to maintain the way of life that we're used to. Buildings are responsible for a significant chunk of energy use in Canada, as well as contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, which is all lending itself to adding to the frequency of climate events. The way that we build and renovate our homes can have a significant impact on how we weather the storms. The first step first, we need to create a solid plan for including resilience in our buildings. We should aim at a building that conserves energy first. Heating and cooling make up more than half of the energy input we have for our buildings. And if we prevent that energy from leaking out, we are going to need less energy to stay comfortable. We can achieve an energy-sipping building with air tightness and insulation, which means that we're going to optimize our building envelope. And that's the layer that separates the inside from the outside. And to reiterate from earlier, as much as possible, we need to choose materials that are durable against the elements. Making resilient choices for our homes and buildings is a bit easier if we understand how buildings are put together. And I want to take a quick look at the types of buildings we have in Lanark County, just a brief review of the main types we have. And maybe you'll see your home in one of these eras. So when settlers came here in the early 1800s, the skills to build were brought over from Europe. The colonizers brought stone masonry skills, brick, timber, and log construction. Lanark County has a goodish population of farm and rural buildings of this type. Now, older buildings like this that are close to municipal infrastructure may have seen streets that have built up higher over the years, which might mean that the street is higher than the top of your foundation, or new drainage systems that affect the original construction. The levels of insulation and air sealing in these buildings may almost be non-existent. And this is why a lot of older buildings have multiple fireplaces in them. I myself lived in one that had 6 fireplaces. Now, looking at a bit more detail, older buildings would have had heavy, durable materials like wood, timber, and solid masonry. And you may find planks lining the walls and floors and timbers in the roof to incorporate the structure. And then for windows, you might have some ornate construction and even perhaps single pane windows if you've left your windows with the older versions. Now, jumping ahead into the end of the 19th and early 20th century, we start to see the early effects of industrial revolution and nominal sizes for lumber. A lot of wood frame construction, repeated shapes, stone foundation, block foundations, and masonry veneers rather than solid. Insulating and air sealing was still a bit of an afterthought, but there might be sawdust, newspaper, felt, materials like asbestos and vermiculite, and especially in the 20th century you might have found those materials. And looking again at construction, many turn of the century buildings use something called a balloon frame. So on the left-hand side there, that's what you're looking at. And it means that wall structures use vertical studs that traveled from foundation to roof. These floors were, the floor systems were tied into the studs and supported by ledger boards. And this kind of construction can develop bowed or warped walls. And you can kind of tell when you see sagging roof lines that there might be balloon construction involved. The stud cavities were also notoriously known for creating a chimney path for fire. So this is something that if you are going to deal with it, you have to deal with that cavity and block it off. And you might also see story-and-a-half buildings, like the one on the right side, use dormers to bring more space and light into the building. Now, moving ahead through time again, now we're looking at the buildings that make up the largest population in Canada, housing that was built between 1950 through about 1980. These buildings were built mainly using lumber and using the platform style of construction. This is what you would see if you went onto pretty much any construction site today, where walls sit on top of floors and the process continues as it goes up. Concrete block and poured concrete are most common for foundations with a lot of repetitious shapes and mass-produced materials like plywood, siding, and roofing. And in the 1970s, interesting that we're seeing kind of a repeat in history, the OPEC crisis spurred on people to better insulate their homes, drive smaller cars, that sort of thing, to save gas and oil. And air tightness was considered, but not as well as modern housing. But this was the era in which a lot of energy efficiency programs got their start. And these are the kinds of buildings that were common to this era: bungalows and high ranch. And the image on the right shows a typical assembly at a projecting or cantilevered floor. We were just talking about this in one of the concierge groups the other day. Use of things like fiberglass insulation and foam boards became more prevalent at the end of the 20th century. But this is the most populous group of buildings that we have. Now, when I mentioned the OPEC crisis and our shifting attention to energy efficiency, I was also hinting at the early days of applying building science to our homes. And in the most basic sense, building science is the management of 3 things: heat, air, and moisture. And we manage these things with things like materials like insulation air and moisture and water barriers, and mechanical ventilation. If we get things right, if we get them managed correctly, we can create a building that is easy to heat and cool and more resilient to the effects of climate. Now, if we zoom in a bit and look at the most important elements to focus on, it looks like this. Air tightness is of primary importance. A leaky building loses heat energy and lets in dust, allergens, and noise. Air also carries moisture, which can damage the inside of walls, floors, and roofs. And water infiltration is right up there with air tightness, as water can do the most damage to a building if it gets inside. We don't want liquid water inside our walls or roofs or floors, and we don't want water vapor condensing inside those assemblies either. When we take care of air tightness and water, we're giving insulation the best chance at being effective as it slows down heat loss. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, but what can I do to my own building to make it more resilient in the face of climate events? Here's a few considerations. Plan for comfort. The planning part is key. Air sealing, insulation, and a fresh air machine like an ERV or HRV, and that's an ERV is an energy recovery ventilator or enthalpy recovery ventilator, and an HRV is a heat recovery ventilator. Basically, it's an air exchange unit that keeps fresh air flowing and exhausts stale air from your building mechanically. Choose materials that can stand up to harsh weather. Metal is good, especially on your roof. Concrete, fiberboard, and fasteners, as Anabela mentioned, fasteners that act against the wind, that are longer and have a heavier thread to them. And also membranes for water resistance around your foundation and on the lower part of your walls. When you're replacing windows and doors, choose units that are energy efficient and high quality, like triple paned, and with a good solar heat gain coefficient. What that means is basically how much sunlight are they going to let into the building. So you don't want too much, you don't want too little, because you want the sun to warm up your building in the winter, and you want a little bit of sun reflected in the summer. One of the most energy efficient things you can do right now and install for your house with nearly instant reduction in energy is using a heat pump. If your heating system and air conditioning is due for replacement, definitely think about putting in a cold climate heat pump. They're 200 to 300% more efficient than any other HVAC system. We also need to be cognizant of improving properties surrounding our buildings to incorporate resiliency measures. For example, make sure that the ground around your house slopes away from your building, especially if you've got an older building where streets have built up around you. You need to have that slope away so water is guided away from your building and down into some kind of drainage away from your basement. Install eaves, trough, and downspouts to direct water even more. And if you've got trees and brush close to your building, consider having them trimmed back. You want to make a clear perimeter around the building in case of fire, and while using good draining layers like crushed stone to keep water flowing away. I highly recommend that you use a local conservation authority. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority are close by, and ask them about the conditions around your area and the environmental risks that you might be facing. Now, the point of doing all of this work to your building is to ensure that you have as many hours or days of safety in your own home when climate events happen. If you have a resilient and energy efficient building, you're less likely to need emergency services. An airtight, well-insulated building may also create a situation where it's so good at conserving energy that renewable energy systems could be used very effectively, which potentially could mean that if power goes out, your renewable energy system kicks in or battery system kicks in, and you might not notice that the power has gone out. In general, a good thing to ask yourself when you're planning for resiliency, how long could we stay safe here in an emergency? And as I wrap up, I want to recommend that you check out the resources at the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. The ICLR is a Canadian organization that's solely focused on informing people on people and communities on measures that they can use to increase their safety and resilience as we face the climate crises. You can find them at the website address on the bottom of the screen at iclr.org. And those of you who are watching my my citations, there you have it. But thank you very much for listening today. I'm part of the Neighborhood Climate Retrofit Concierge Program. And if you're part of that program, I'd be happy to see you there. But there's my contact information and my website. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Andy. Every time I hear you talk, it just gets better and better.
Yep.
Questions?
Please don't hesitate to ask. Andy is a veritable fount of information, and including detailed information.
I'm also tall and very rugged.
Yeah, a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago, I had to replace my furnace and air conditioner, and I asked the local contractor to whether I should put in a heat pump, and they said, "Oh no, they're not worth doing." And of course, in the next 5 years, heat pumps exploded. Is it too late for me to go back and do some retrofitting in that area?
No, and we were just at a session a few days ago where Enbridge and Enerquality put on a presentation where one of the most challenging relationships that the heat pump initiative has had over the last 10 years is getting HVAC contractors to buy in, to start with that in their conversations. And no, it's not too late. I mean, one of the things that happens often when you run into that is you get stranded assets where if you just laid out $5,000, $10,000 on a new HVAC system, it's very difficult to turn on a dime and say, oh yeah, I'm going to install a heat pump now. Heat pumps can work in tandem with an existing system. It's called a dual fuel system, or they can work on their own. We've learned through the concierge program that many people, especially rural, even if they get a heat pump, because they're still tied into the electrical grid, that they'll be good as a supplemental piece. But many are very reticent to give up their wood stove, just because they know that the power is going to go out and they're going to need that. As soon as you can, I think getting into a heat pump, and especially if you're looking at replacing a unit for central air conditioning, a heat pump can do both. It can do heating and cooling. And so it just makes perfect sense. And I think Sadie can also speak to some of the rebates and incentives that are available for heat pumps these days, where it can knock a significant chunk of money off of actually getting a heat pump in your driveway.
Yep.
Thank you, David, for that question, for getting the ball rolling. I would like to remind everyone, if possible, to put the questions in the chat so that we can keep them organized in that way. If you feel like you really must speak, you could raise your hand, but we might get a lot of questions, so we're going to need to keep things organized. So now I have a bunch of questions in the chat. I'd like to start with Alice. So she said that she lives in a 160-year-old house and was told that a heat pump could not be installed. Are they being designed now for historic homes?
Yeah, and it depends on a bunch of things. So let me backpedal a bit here. That part of the process of making the plan to make your home more comfortable, more energy efficient, more resilient is the planning, measuring, and testing of your home. And so with the concierge group, one of the first steps that we recommend to participants is they get in touch with an energy advisor and have an audit done or have an assessment done in your building. Older buildings aren't necessarily terribly inefficient, because sometimes if the plaster and lath is still intact, that can be actually a very good barrier against air travel and against vapor travel. But in general, older buildings will have more cracks, they'll have less efficient windows, they'll have chimneys and things like that. And so the prospect of not being able to get a heat pump on a building may have been that whoever was doing the install looked at the building and said, no, this kind of building isn't airtight enough, it isn't well insulated enough for us to put in a heat pump or multiple heat pumps to make it go. And then I don't want to knock HVAC too much, but I know that it's been something of in the last 40, 50 years where HVAC companies will come in and they will have a size ratio that will work to say how many BTUs of energy do we need to have in the heating system in order to keep this building comfortable. And the assumption was always that they were going to be blasting heat through a leaky building that they knew was going to leak a certain amount of heat out, and so they had to overcompensate for that. And so those systems are still in their warehouses. They're still selling those kind of systems. Heat pumps really like energy efficient buildings. They like airtight buildings. They function better that way, but it's not to say they won't function in an older building. That assessment that I talked about is going to point out some things that could be done to the building to make it better. Air sealing is the primary piece. That might be as simple as going around with a caulking gun and sealing up cracks. If a blower door test is done on the building and finds those air leaks, they can be sealed up for the most part. But there also might be a little bit more major elements that need to be done, like air sealing and filling up your attic and making sure that you've got a sufficient amount of attic insulation, and it's possible to get at the walls too, and it's possible to get at the foundation. Making the home more energy efficient makes it so that a heat pump can work better. And in an ideal situation, the most energy efficient building, if the building envelope is built to such a way that it can maximize that energy efficiency, it may be possible then to downsize the heating systems and cooling systems that are required for the building. Now that's on the probably the one end of the extreme, but somewhere in the middle there, you can find out what is it that I need to do in order to make my building ready for a heat pump.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to go to our next question about heat pumps while we're on this topic, but don't worry, Pamela and others that have asked other questions, we'll circle back to you. So Susan says, we have put 2 heat pumps in our 1840s stone farmhouse. Huge cost savings on energy use is the result. Ground source and air source. Next move, battery backup system. Suggestions on type and size.
It's still a really...
Jump
Yeah,
in
go
here
ahead, Sue.
first, sorry, just to say that we are certainly planning to do a workshop on battery backup and solar combined as systems. So just keep your eyes out for that. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that that the heat pumps are working out for you. Ground source heat pump, although it's more expensive and a little more involved, are just one order of magnitude more efficient than an air source heat pump, and they last a lot longer as well. They're good for, at least the tubing is good for like 60, 80 years. In terms of battery systems, this is still a new thing that's happening. Though Tesla Powerwall, you probably have seen that one, and there's competitors to that effect. I know in the past that one of the concierge cohorts that we talked about at that time, if it wasn't Hydro One, it might have been one of the hydro providers in the area, had a program where if your building was without power for a certain number of days over a certain number of winters, that you could have qualified for some incentives for battery systems. Now, getting involved with batteries, you likely would be best to talk to people that do renewable power systems. So people that do solar, people that do wind, geothermal, they're going to have some information about battery power systems, just because some of the technology is the same, where you've got direct current and you need inverters and that kind of thing. Do your homework. I would say that there's a bunch out there, and talk to the people who provide your power. They're going to also have information.
Sean, I think that probably also answered your question about backup power. So I'm going to move back to Pamela, and Sean, do let me know if you feel like your question wasn't addressed. So Pamela says, hi, Andy, please would you explain the amount of crushed stone around the foundation that would be recommended? Also, any suggestions on the triple pane windows? Thanks.
Yeah, and you can spend as much as you want on triple pane windows. There are many companies around that have quality triple pane windows. What you're looking for is a decent quality, and you're going to see, giving a little bit more building science here. So insulation is rated for R value, so it's resistant to the flow of heat. Windows and doors are rated for U value. And the assembly basically is rated so that R values tell you how much heat can be resisted, and U value tells you how much heat is actually flowing across it. So a lower U value number on a window or door is better. A higher R value is better. So you want as much R value as you can in walls and attics and stuff, but on windows and doors, you want a very low U value. Getting a good quality window unit that has a good insulated frame, that has good quality glass, and the spacers in between the glass, they should be good quality as well. You probably want to go for something that has some kind of inert gas between the panes of glass, so that would be argon or krypton gas. You also are going to be looking for something called low E coatings, and that means low emissivity. So they spray a clear coating over certain panes in the window that reflect heat out, and so you'd be looking for a triple pane insulated frame, low E argon window. That's a great thing to throw out at parties. This is what I've got in my windows. But those, talk to your window. I know that there's many windows installers out there in the area that have all sorts of options for you. The best quality window that you can get is going to be one that's on the side of a building that is facing either east, south, or west. Following the sun across your building is best where you've got good quality windows. Northern windows still give off some light. They give off a constant light. You just don't want to have low quality windows on that side of the building just because they're going to be leaky. The installation part of windows as well is also, and what I mean by that is when they put the window in the hole, how are they actually insulating around it? And a bit of spray foam to seal around it and to provide that insulating is really good. Windows should incorporate with your air, with your thermal, and with your moisture barriers in the house, and that's also a critical piece. The other part of your question was about crushed stone. There are really good diagrams and recommendations. I think Anabela had one in her presentation. It was talking about a certain perimeter of crushed stone around the building. Now, the crushed stone is basically there because it's inflammable. And if you have that barrier around there that's like a meter or meter and a half, then you're kind of creating a barrier where you've got no burnable materials. Crushed stone is also doing a job of drainage. And for about 6 inches out from your foundation, if you've got crushed stone that's going down the side of your foundation, or I know if you've got the opportunity to open up your foundation, like excavate around it, a lot of contractors have put in this rugged plastic dimple board against the foundation to encourage water to flow away. Getting into how much crushed stone you need just depends on what is the perimeter of your house. About 6 inches for drainage around your house, and as deep as you can go. And as for the fire break around your house, I think there's great diagrams at the ICLR site or at the Intact site. Our friends in the United States also have Housing and Urban Development has really good digestible IKEA brochure kind of quality to tell people how to do things. But that's all part of the planning process too, is finding out how to make that go. What's the best way to go? I highly recommend that when you are working on this kind of thing, talk to professionals. Get an energy advisor involved, talk to contractors, and ask them to help you out with this situation.
Thank you, Andy. Our next question is from Linda, who has a heat pump and HVAC, and she's wondering if they should look into an ERV.
Yeah, a fresh air machine is a really good idea. It can also work in tandem with an existing system, though it does require some ductwork, which will have to be mapped out. An ERV or an HRV, the ERV being the upper more piece of equipment, is going to be taking stale air away from places like bathrooms, kitchen, stairwells, utility rooms, and it's going to be exchanging it with fresh air that will go into bedrooms, living room. It does kind of double duty. It's maintaining indoor air quality. It's also maintaining that flow of air, so humidity inside the building doesn't get the chance to get too high or too low, because the HRV or ERV is helping to moderate that. This is a really important thing, because these a lot of the ERVs have pretty good, like, honkin' filters on them, HEPA filters, that can help in those times when air quality outside isn't so good. It can actually prevent a lot of those pollutants and allergens from coming into your building, which a normal HVAC system, like a forced air system, it has an air exchange, but a lot of that is just to provide the air to go and push the heat around your building. It's not necessarily doing a great job of filtration, whereas HRV and ERV can do that. And I would recommend that if it's within your budget, and if it's within, like, if you're doing a renovation where you can allot a bit of space for some fairly narrow ductwork, look at getting an ERV. It would be, I know that buildings that have ERVs in them, it's a noticeable difference in terms of air quality. I've been in a bunch, and the air quality is just that much better.
Great.
Thank you. Our next question is from Doug, who says that he is avoiding expanding foam insulation. What are the healthy choices?
Sorry, about expanding foam insulation, you were allergic to it, or?
He said avoiding.
Yeah, the foam insulation has its place. And I know that when it's used and applied properly, it can be airtight. It's usually watertight, and it can be something that even these days that they have foam that has an intumescent coating on it. Some of it does, where if there's a fire, because it has to, like, otherwise it would be flammable, that this intumescent coating will sort of balloon up and prevent the fire from going. Where foam has been used and is being promoted, I'm of the mind, and this is just my own opinion, that foam is best at using around window units, door units, penetrations in the building envelope where like an HVAC or like furnace pipes go out, where electrical goes out, plumbing, like a ceiling and those kind of holes. Where it gets a little bit questionable is when somebody's foaming their entire attic or foaming over existing walls. One of the big no-nos, and I'm a former heritage restoration guy, so one of the big no-nos is spraying spray foam up against things like brick or stone. If you can't reverse the operation, then you're going to be dealing with a whole lot of scraping. Should that day come where if you sprayed it up against the stone wall or in your attic or something, and then you notice that there's leaks happening somewhere, getting that foam out of there is darn near backbreaking. And there's a lot of horror stories about spray foam being improperly applied and giving off terrible smells or cracking. Most spray foam companies, they have to go through pretty rigorous training for installation, and all of the different types of spray foam out there, you need specialized training for it. I'm of the mind that it should be used sparingly, just because it is fairly unreversible, and that's a tough thing to deal with. It has its place, and I think that determining where that place is in your building is going to be critical for you. Last but not least in this, spray foam can be pretty expensive if you're using it in a mass application. Like spraying it across an attic is, times more expensive than doing something like a loose fill mineral fiber or cellulose or something like that. You're going to be spending a lot of money if you're using spray foam in any great amount.
Douglas said that he is particularly concerned about toxic off-gassing.
Yep, there's that too. That volatile organic compounds, the smell that you smell when you sit in a new car or when you get a new piece of furniture. Off-gassing from building materials is something that is a really prevalent thing in alternative forms of construction, where you get more natural materials or traditional materials like plaster or stucco that is made a traditional formula with like lime and sand and that kind of thing. Doesn't have a heavy off-gassing. Construction methods like rammed earth don't have a lot of off-gassing, but trading off certain materials for their volatile organic compounds or lack thereof is an exercise. You have to do your homework and find out what kind of materials are you using that don't have that off-gassing. Most materials do, and it's just trying to apply that stuff sparingly. Spray foam, unfortunately, gets into one of those categories where, yeah, it does off-gas. Once it's done off-gassing, it's inert. That it's not doing, it doesn't have a forever off-gassing. And those spray foam companies will often say that once it's cured, once it's hardened, that it is then inert. It won't off-gas after that.
Great, thank you, Andy. I have a follow-up question about ERVs from David, who's asking if the ducting is separate from standard forced air systems.
If you're installing an HRV, it can run in tandem with your forced air system. So basically, it would be like putting the HRV in line with your forced air system so that before the air gets to your heating unit, it goes through the HRV. And so you can use your forced air ductwork with the HRV or ERV. If you had a radiant floor system or something that didn't have ductwork, then that's when you need to consider, okay, where am I putting these ducts? What do I have to build out some chases or bulkheads to have them go through, or do I have a closet that I don't use or a cupboard that I don't use that I can stuff through? But yeah, you can run an HRV or ERV in tandem with a forced air system. It just means you got to figure out where it's going to go in the line to make it work.
Great, thank you, Andy. I have a recommendation from Danielle following up on Susan and Sean's comments about solar. Danielle says, we installed our net metered solar with a battery backup through Ottawa Valley Solar, and says it's a great service. So that's good to note for anyone thinking of doing that. And on a similar vein, we have a question from Donna, who says, hey, Andy, are there currently local builders who encompass these ideologies in building low footprint, disaster resilient, and sustainable homes?
Yeah, and hi, Donna. Nice to see you. Yes, there are builders around that are getting into it. I'm part of the Lanark Leeds Home Builders Association and have been for a number of years. And just over the last 5-6 years, we're seeing a lot of younger companies join up, many of whom are savvy with the idea of building to net zero, building Energy Star, and incorporating that kind of ethos in the way that they build. There are companies that they'll advertise it as well. That they're a net zero builder or that they build sustainably. And there are a bunch in our area that are doing it. As for resiliency and disaster kind of recovery, it's difficult to pin down any one builder who would say, yeah, that's what I'm all about. Now, there are companies that are doing disaster restoration, meaning after the fact, if there's a fire or flood, like Phoenix, those guys who go around and they fix up buildings that have been through a disaster. Many builders who are either doing renovations or new will shy away from saying, yeah, we build to resilience, because as much as we possibly can plan and use hardy materials for our buildings and that kind of thing, we don't yet have a one size fits all or a catch-all kind of building method that is resistant to everything. And especially when you get 150-mile-an-hour winds that just tear the roof off of a building, we don't know of systems that can do resistance to that effect. Or if there's a massive flood that's going to take away at the foundations, that's an infrastructure issue. And I know that there are groups in Canada that are dealing with that. Same thing with fire. What you saw in Lytton and Jasper, where a fire just tears through the neighborhood. Interesting though, if you remember seeing from the fires that went through LA in the last couple of years, there were a few buildings that I know that my friends in the Passive House community were quick to jump on to say those buildings didn't burn, the Passive House buildings. Mind you, a few of those buildings had xeriscaping around their building where they didn't have any grass, they didn't have any brush, it was all stone, just crushed stone and ornamental kind of bushes that grow well in stone. And that certainly would have been a factor. But yes, to make a short story long, there are builders in our area who are embracing this kind of methodology and building to a higher standard in terms of performance. And at the same time, they're also learning as much as they can about what is resilience and how do I incorporate that into their business model.
While the concierge program does not recommend specifically any contractors, we do keep a list of who our participants recommend and who local people have a good experience working with. So if you participate in the concierge program, you can benefit from your peers' experiences with other contractors as well. I have another question from Sean, who says an Ecobee was installed with his heat pump installation, but my Ecobee does not auto start after a power failure. So I must turn off. So must I turn, sorry, I can't read today. So I must turn off and on my furnace to restart the heating. Is that normal, or is there a problem with my Ecobee?
That's a great question. I know smart thermostats and Ecobee and that kind of thing are also, well, they're not necessarily new. Like 15, 20 years we've had smart thermostats, but they keep getting better and better. I'm not sure whoever installed your heat pump or your system would be able to answer that question better. Talk to an HVAC professional. Just because if it's a go downstairs in your basement and do that little click on the switch to get it to reset, that might be as difficult as it gets. If it's presenting other problems where you're having to do, sleuthing around your building to try and figure out what's going on, then I would talk to your HVAC contractor. And Shauna, I think you also had a question about generator as well. And I know I wanted to just relate a story. The other day at our concierge session, I had almost exactly the same question. Someone who wanted to get off propane, wanted to decrease the amount of fossil fuel they were using, but they had a generator, emergency generator or Generac that ran off of propane. And the way to look at that is if you can manage to reduce the amount of fossil fuel that your main system is using, but you have a fossil fuel powered generator, the amount of time that you're going to be using that generator compared to your heating system is night and day. So if you need to use a fossil fuel system to have that instantaneous, your generator kicks in, that's part of the equation. And it's probably a good thing to keep that in place.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for circling back to that question as well. Sadie has posted in the chat the list of recommended contractors. So that's an added bonus for you guys. You don't have to actually participate in concierge to get that list, but you still should. Any more questions for Andy?
If I can just leave with a parting words, give yourself room to breathe with all this stuff. Much of this and what we're talking about in terms of resilience, in terms of increasing the energy performance of our buildings, we haven't had to deal with this ever in this capacity. And so it's worth giving yourself some room to breathe, and that everybody is learning about this and we're all trying to get our heads wrapped around it. But as much as you can do is good. Just keep plugging away.
Thank you so much, Andy. That's just absolutely fabulous. So now we're going to have Elizabeth Bolt from Lanark County talk to us about the Better Homes funding program. And in particular, we have that here because it's the one funding program that does provide support for resilience planning, resilience actions around your home. Sadie is going to a little later touch on some of the other programs, funding programs that are there, but that's not what we're delving into today. So Elizabeth is going to talk about the resilience part of the Better Homes program. Elizabeth is the Climate and Environmental Program Coordinator for the County of Lanark. She leads the development and delivery of environmental initiatives there for local residents. She has a degree in biology and environmental science from Trent University with a specialization in conservation biology. She's a lifelong resident of Lanark County, grew up in Perth, now lives in Montague Township. So Elizabeth, please do join us here.
Thank you. Just trying to find my screen. This worked earlier and now I can't find my screen, of course. Can you see that?
Not yet.
How about now?
I just added your screen, Elizabeth. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so it's working?
Stuff.
All right, perfect. So yeah, thanks for joining everyone today. My name's Elizabeth Bolt, and I work for Lanark County, and in particular, help run the Better Homes Lanark program, which is a relatively new program that can help you, help provide you funding for home energy efficiency, but also resiliency improvements. So we've heard lots of great information about like the climate trends and how we can prepare our homes for future climate events. So now we're just going to hop into a program that can help you fund these improvements. So Better Homes Lanark started in June of last year, and it's a low interest loan program that offers personalized support to help you make your home more comfortable, efficient, resilient, and affordable. So one of the sort of unique features of the program is this personalized support. I know it's difficult. There's always new programs coming up and leaving, but this one can really help you sort of navigate other programs that exist while also offering retrofit coaching services to help you understand your program from the time you apply and make your way through the entire program. So yeah, just some quick highlights. Better Homes Lanark offers low interest loans and grants. Like I said, long-term repayment periods, so 5 to 20 years, and they're repaid on your property tax bill. And access, again, to that free personalized retrofit coaching and guidance on navigating additional funding programs. So why participate in Better Homes Lanark? So of course, there's the social benefits to increasing your home affordability by improving the energy efficiency of your home. You're going to reduce your energy bills, increasing home comfort, health, and quality of life.
and increasing your home's resiliency to the climate impacts that were discussed today. Also environmental impacts or environmental benefits of the program. So by reducing your energy usage in your home, you're reducing your greenhouse gas emissions and improving your air quality, conserving water of your home, and increasing renewable energy generation in your home. And then, like I said, by improving the energy efficiency, you're going to see cost savings in your energy bills. But in terms of resiliency, if you choose to do resiliency improvements, you can also see cost savings in terms of avoided damage to your home. So Better Homes Lanark covers a whole suite of improvements. So you can target your upgrades to your mechanical system. So things like air source and ground source heat pumps, drain water heat recovery systems, high efficiency water heaters. And not only would the air or the heat pumps provide efficient heating, but also cooling in the summer. So helping prevent extreme heat in your home. It can fund renewable energy systems, help you complete improvements to your building envelope. So things like new windows, doors, insulation, and air sealing. And again, like Andy mentioned, once you improve your building envelope, not only is it improving your energy efficiency, but also making your home more resilient. Say if there is a power outage, your home's able to hold heat longer, and there's just less quick changes in heat during like extreme heat or extreme cold events. Better Homes Lanark can also fund smart and other technologies, so things like thermostats and controllers and lighting controls. And I'll get into this in a bit when I get through the actual program application process, but eligible homes must show that they can reduce their energy use by 30% in the home. So energy use or greenhouse gas emissions, and this is shown through pre and post energy audits. So you would have an energy advisor come in, do an assessment of your home, tell you where you could make improvements. And then once those improvements are completed, they would come back and do a reassessment. So a unique feature of Better Homes Lanark, which will interest you guys today, talking about resiliency, is that up to 30% of the total funding request can be used for non-energy improvements. So that could be things like electrical service upgrades, low flow fixtures, cosmetic repairs that are needed as you're doing home improvements, energy audit and permit costs. And the last item, last but not least, is these climate resiliency measures. So you can use Better Homes Lanark to fund upgrades that can protect your home from events such as flooding, wind, fire, and loss of power. So we heard from the two great presentations earlier, a lot of the great examples of upgrades that you can do in your home. So here's a list, definitely not exhaustive, but could include basement waterproofing, sump pumps, backwater valves, backup generators, batteries, window wells, impact resistant windows and doors. And like I said, this isn't an exhaustive list. There's lots of improvements that can be done to make your home more resilient to these climate impacts. So definitely if you're unsure of whether an improvement you're thinking of would be eligible, I would encourage you to apply and talk to us about it and see what we could do. So available funding. So the program offers $10,000 to $40,000 of a low interest loan that's repaid on your property tax bill over 5 to 20 years. So it's 2.75% fixed interest rate. And of the $40,000 loan, up to $5,000 of that can be grants. So it is taken off the portion that has to be repaid on your property tax bill. So like I said, there's up to $5,000 per project. of free grant money. So earlier I mentioned the minimum energy or greenhouse gas reduction is 30%. If you were to exceed that and go above 40% greenhouse gas or energy consumption reduction, you could receive a $1,000 grant. And there's also $1,500 for incorporating climate resiliency measures. And then up to a total of $5,000, so you could get the maximum amount of the grant if you, for households that have a verified high energy cost burden of equal to or greater than 6%. So this refers to the percentage of your after-tax income that is used for home energy bills. So we would work with you to calculate your energy cost burden to see if that is something you would qualify for. And in terms of eligibility, so the program is open to residential single-family homes in Lanark County municipalities. So all property owners must consent to participation, and all municipal property tax bills must have been paid within the last 5 years promptly. And so, as I said earlier, we work with all the local municipalities in Lanark County to have the loan amount actually gets added to your property tax bill. So it would come out with your regular property tax payments. And as I said, again, you must achieve that 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or energy use. So typically it may not just be like a single improvement that achieves this target. It's typically multiple improvements. So say if you were doing windows, insulation, or a heat pump, that would likely achieve the required target. But if you're unsure, again, we do work with a retrofit coach who can help you sort of understand your project and if the improvements you're planning would reach those targets. So in terms of the application process, we have an application form online, which I have linked at the end of my presentation. So you would submit an application form online, and then that would get you in touch with our retrofit coach. So then you would meet with our retrofit coach, get an introduction to the program, and then he would, his name is Jason, he's very well educated and great at walking people through the program. So he would direct you to complete your first home energy assessment. So that's sort of before the retrofit. And then we get to the planning stage. So once you've had your home energy assessment, you're going to meet with Jason again to walk through the report, help you plan the improvements that you want to do, make sure that they're going to achieve those targets. And then you're going to collect your quotes and send them to us in a funding request form. So you're going to outline what you're planning on doing and how much you're requesting. And then you would receive an initial disbursement of 30 to 50% of your funding request, which can be used immediately for contractor down payments. So then once that's all done, you can complete the work. We'll give you the go-ahead to get all the contractors in and finish up the improvements, after which you would submit to us. Well, first you would get that follow-up home energy assessment and submit the invoices and reports to us to get your final disbursement. So there's just a note here that homeowners have 12 months from the time we say you're good to go. You have 12 months to complete your project. And so, yeah, you would receive an initial disbursement for contractor deposits. And then the remaining funding is dispersed after the work is done. So Better Homes Lanark can be viewed sort of as a reimbursement program, as you must plan to pay the contractors before a final disbursement is received. So this could be in the form of cash or line of credit, or working with the contractors. Some are flexible in terms of payment schedules. But yes, it is viewed as can be viewed as a reimbursement program. And again, so retrofit coaching is sort of the unique feature, one of the unique features of our program, and that there's someone there to guide you from the time you start until the time you completely finish your project. There is a coach that you can talk to for any questions you may have. So whether it's understanding your home's energy performance, understanding different upgrade options, or reviewing quotes, preparing for your home energy assessment, and just guiding you through the whole program and directing you to other funding programs that you may be eligible for. So that's the gist of Better Homes Lanark. If you have any questions about your planned improvements, I would definitely encourage you to reach out and at least apply, which would get you in touch with Jason, at least to kind of have an initial conversation and understand if this is the right program for you. So there's my contact information, and I'm also open to questions.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. That was great. Great to flesh out the opportunities for resiliency actions. So I think we
do have a
few
couple of
here.
questions.
Yep.
So Douglas asks, are any of these grants applicable to new homeowner buildings? And similarly, Rita says, what if my home is less than 5 years old and I want to explore solar? Any options?
So for Better Homes Lanark specifically, because it's paid on the property tax bill, we do require a history of property tax payments within a local municipality. So we do recognize that, yeah, there's a lot of people who are moving into Lanark County and may not have that 5 years of experience. So we would work with you to discuss options, whether it's if you've lived in another municipality in Lanark County, we could look at that, like property tax bills from the other municipality, or kind of work with you to discuss options. So it's not, if you have less than 5 years, it's not absolutely set in stone, but we would work kind of on a case-by-case basis to sort of assess that. Yeah, I think that touches both of the questions.
Sorry, Elizabeth, is a new home, a new house eligible, or is it just for retrofits?
Oh, so yeah, it is just for retrofits. So the program has that 30% target. So we're really targeting deep energy retrofits. You have to indicate that you can reduce your energy use in the home by 30%. And that's through the pre and post energy audits. So yeah, it is for existing homes. And I'm not sure if there's any other funding programs for new buildings. I don't know if anyone else is I don't know of any for new buildings right now.
Sadie,
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yep.
So I know, for example, the home renovation savings program, to technically be new builds, they do require the house to be inhabited for at least 6 months. So as long as you're covering like that little 6-month window, you could maybe apply for that one. The other one that could potentially be for new builds would be the CMHC, like the Eco Plus, which is refund on mortgage insurance. But yeah, as far as new builds, I think that's about it. Yeah, and sorry, Rachel, I'll let you ask the question that Pam has here in the chat.
Great, thanks, Sadie. And Alice, we do see your question about what is the concierge program. We will be talking about that in a few minutes, but we're just going to finish these questions about the Lanark programs. So Donna says, I was part of the Renovate Lanark program. I got some of my doors and windows replaced. Does that stop me from applying for this program?
No, that wouldn't stop you. You can apply, and as long as you would talk with Jason, and he's going to help you understand if you could still reach that 30% savings. But yeah, no, it certainly wouldn't stop you from applying.
Great. And then Pamela is wondering, can you sign up for the coaching and the home assessment without requiring the loan?
So it is a loan program. So to get the coaching, like it's not the coach doesn't do the home assessment.
Yeah.
So the coach walks you through like planning your project for Better Homes Lanark, but then the home assessment is like a separate, you would bring in a separate contractor to come in and do the assessment. But yeah, it is for like loan recipients.
So Pamela says, are you better to get an independent home assessment then?
Oh, we'll get into that in about 2 minutes, Pam. Okay. Hang tight.
And now David is asking, will comment notes be in the recording? So Sadie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the settings for this video is that if you have been a participant, you can still go back and read the comments that we have made in the chat. But I don't think they will necessarily be in the recording that will be available on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah, so I did set a transcript so we can get that transcript and send that transcript to the participants in this video.
Okay, last call for questions for Elizabeth about the Better Homes Lanark program. PJ, that's a great question. They asked, does anyone know if United Counties of Leeds and Grenville have a similar program? I am also based in Leeds and Grenville, and no, we do not right now. I think Ottawa also has one, but Leeds and Grenville does not. But I think that it would be really great to start advocating collectively for something like that. Okay, anything else for Elizabeth?
Okay. Now we're going to turn to Sadie. Sadie is going to tell us very briefly about the concierge program. She's going to touch on some of the other funds that are available that we talk about in more detail in the concierge program, and the range of assistance that is provided that way. So Sadie is CNL Senior Project Coordinator for our Climate Neighborhood Concierge Program. She's been with CNL, I think, for 4 years, 5 years, Sadie? I'm losing track. Perth resident, and she also sits on the board of directors for the table in Perth. Take it away, Sadie.
Hey, thank you, Sue. And I know you always say I talk really fast, but I have 10 minutes, so I am going to talk super fast. So try to keep up, people. So thank you again, everybody. Elizabeth, thank you for the presentation. Andy, I think you're still here, and I know Dr. Bonada had to take off, but thank you to our wonderful speakers, and thank you for our participants as well for taking time out of your Saturday morning to spend some time with us. So Elizabeth's presentation was a great jumping off point to one part of what the concierge program covers, which is funding. So there are a number of programs available right now that include programs with grants, loans, and in some cases, programs that can provide free upgrades to your appliances, free installation, and even free cold climate heat pumps. And I will show a little graph here at the end just so you can take note of the programs. But as Sue mentioned, we do cover this a bit more in the concierge program. That's just a little part of what we do. We try to help people navigate the programs. Unfortunately, these programs are a little bit all over the place. They come and go as they please. They change names. So it can be really complicated for people to actually understand what is covered by each of them and when they are eligible to participate, when the program closes, but then sometimes they reopen. So we help you out with all of that. But yeah, I'll take a step back for a second and explain a bit more about the program. So the concierge program is a free 6-session program available for residents across Lanark County and Smiths Falls. That being said, we do have a virtual group that we're happy to take people that are outside of Lanark County. So the program has been designed to help people better understand their homes, and especially when it comes to comfort, energy use, and upgrades. So each of the sessions in this 6-session, the groups are 2 hours long, and they take place in person in the urban centers across the region. So that means we have groups in Perth, Almond, Carleton Place, Smiths Falls, did I say Almond? Yes, Lanark Highlands, and like I said, the virtual group, We're open to starting groups in other places though, as we see fit. Like, for example, we might start one in Tay Valley, as we do have very active Perth groups. And Beckwith might be another place where we're starting one. But as of now, we're starting groups, like we have a new Perth group starting on Monday. And we have one in Almond and Smiths Falls starting in April. So if you're in these areas and you want to partake, feel free to reach out and we can add you to the groups. So really, a lot of people know when something isn't quite right in their home, and maybe you've gotten used to like the draft by the window that you're walking next to, or like you get used to just putting on 50 layers of clothes because your home is hard to heat, or it gets too hot in the summer, so you just go to your basement and take your refuge there. So you might have gotten used to these things, but if you're feeling like maybe it's time for a change and you want to start, that you can come join us for the programs. So through the programs, we not only talk about the funding, we bring in experts like Dr. Bonada and Andy, and experts for things like heat pumps, solar panels and battery storage. Who am I missing? Well, each of the sessions covers a different expert. And we have an expert, a different topic and an expert that's covering that topic. And then we help support you step by step through the retrofit process. So I know 6 months sounds like a long time, but keep in mind that it's 6 sessions and each of the sessions is 2 hours long. So the program really is 12 hours of your life. And the feedback that we have gotten from past participants is that it's been really helpful. We have had past participants come back to other sessions just to retake the program, as it's very useful for them. So you're always welcome to do that. We also work with both homeowners and renters. So don't feel like just because some of the funding programs don't apply to you doesn't mean the concierge program is not applicable for you. We want to make sure that we help as many people as we can. Yeah, that's basically it. I'll just quickly show you the funding programs that are available right now. I'm going to, oops, there I am. And can everybody see that?
Yes. Oh,
great.
Yep.
Yep, good. So thank you, Rachel, for doing up this slide. So the programs are here in these columns. The first one is one that I would encourage everybody here to, whenever we get off this workshop, to go and try to apply to, is the Energy Affordability Program. This is both an income-based program, but also if you are in any programs, such as if you're, for example, on disability, or if you're of a certain age group, and there's like 7 programs that if you're into those programs, even though you might be over the income line, you would still be eligible for this program. It's an incredibly easy application. It's less than 5 minutes of your time. And if you get it, you can get things like free insulation in your basement and attic, free cold climate heat pump, upgrades to your appliances. Like I said, you can upgrade your fridge, your freezer, your dehumidifier, things like that. And worst case scenario, you get some free light bulbs. And you do have an energy advisor come to your home, do an assessment with a blower door test. So if you have never done an energy assessment before and are feeling a little bit nervous about it, this is a good place to start. Usually energy assessments cost around $500 for the initial one and around $250 to $300 for the second one. So it is a good sum of money, but this one would be a free one. And so you get the experience of what it is. And it's also, this program is also eligible to renters, which is great. Yeah, like I said, it's incredibly quick and easy. Please try to apply, even if you don't think you're eligible. Give it a whirl. Like, there's no loss except for, like I said, 5 minutes of your time. And if you know somebody that might be benefiting from this program, please pass it along. Obviously, the second one here is the Better Homes Lanark program, which Elizabeth already told us all about. And yeah, all the, the support is the loans, and we have the grants for that one. I'm not going to get into it again. Elizabeth did a fantastic job of explaining that one. The next one is the HRSP, which stands for the Home Renovation Savings Program. This program has two different streams, one that requires an energy assessment and one without. If you have done energy assessments in the past, if you think your home is at a good place that you only want to get one thing, the one without the energy assessment might be a good fit for you. This covers things like solar, insulation, heat pumps, and I do believe they also have a small rebate for if you want to upgrade, for example, your washing machine. There's I think up to $200 and if you're already upgrading things, they're giving you a little bit of extra money to get this upgraded as well. And smart thermostats is the last one. And then the other one is if you do want to do a bit more of deeper work, is the one with the energy assessments. Now, to be clear, with the home renovation savings program, you do need to get the energy assessment done with a list of their the contractors that they're recommending, and you do need to do the work with the contractors for the work and energy assessors for the energy assessments. And Elizabeth, I do believe that you're not required for a specific contractor for Better Homes Lanark, but they do need to be NRCan certified, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the list is on the Better Homes Lanark website, right?
Of the energy advisor?
No, of the contractors.
There is a list of contractors who have received like a program introduction session.
Right.
But people are allowed to choose whoever they want. And when people talk with Jason, like our retrofit coach,
yes,
if they're interested in the home renovation savings program, like we have the list of contract or energy advisors that are required for that program. So we'll just help make sure that the applicants kind of choose one of the actual like qualified service organizations so that they don't have to repeat an energy assessment.
Yes, thank you. And that is also a great point. If you have gotten an energy assessment in the past, but you did this prior to applying to any of these programs, you are very likely going to have to get a second one. So make sure that that's something we really try to emphasize in concierge. Have a plan ready. You don't have to know exactly what you're doing or exactly what you want, but have a general idea of what you want to get done, apply to the programs, and then get your energy assessment. That one is key. And then the last program here is the Ontario Energy Support Program. That's just a credit on your monthly electricity bills. Again, this one's a really simple one to apply to if you think you might be eligible. It is income based. So if you think you might be eligible, please just apply. And that is it from my end. I am going to put here in the chat because I do want to really ask everybody to oh, that's not it. That's the presentation. My bad. 1 second. To answer the survey that we did for this presentation, for this workshop, it's again, I think it's less than 20 questions. It's why am I sharing this? Sorry. So we will do a follow-up email when we are after this, and we're going to put the link for the video recording. We're going to put the link for the slides of our speakers, and also the link for the survey. So yes, please take the time. And that's it from my end. Sue or Rachel, anything else we want to add there?
No, just to thank everybody. It's been, I think, a fabulous session. We certainly absolutely need you to fill in our response form there to tell us if it was fabulous in your eyes or, lacked in some way. Thank you very much for all those hands, please. And, any suggestions for improvement for whatever, that would be really, really helpful.